1358, the north face of Howes Peak. Three figures on a rope continue their descent. Suddenly, a deep crack. The summit cornice collapses. A white wall engulfs the slope. The speed, 100 kilometers an hour. There's no time to react. A standard technical ascent becomes a death trap. On that face are three of the world's best climbers, the dream team, the ones who had climbed the impossible. Was it a miscalculation, a flawed risk assessment, or just a merciless twist of fate, something no amount of skill could overcome? This is the story of David Lama, the prodigy who changed the rules of alpinism, and how a single second can erase 28 years of a life lived on the edge of possibility. August 1990. In a maternity ward in Innsbruck, a boy is born who, 20 years later, would be called the new Messi of alpinism. Except his playing field wasn't a pitch, it was a vertical wall 7,000 meters high. David Lama, a name that would force the climbing world to rewrite the rulebook. His father was a Sherpa from Nepal, a people whose lungs work at high altitude as efficiently as ours do at sea level. A genetic adaptation to hypoxia forged over millennia of life in the Himalayas. His mother, a Tyrolean from Austria. And Tyrol isn't just a region, it's the cradle of European alpinism, a place where kids learn to climb rock faces before they can even read. Nature was conducting an experiment, Himalayan endurance plus alpine technique. The result? 1995. A 5-year-old David finds himself at a climbing camp for the first time. A typical story, parents wanting to introduce their child to the mountains. But the man watching the group was no ordinary instructor. It was Peter Habeler, a legend. The man who, in 1978, along with Reinhold Messner, proved the impossible by summiting Everest without supplemental oxygen. The medical community had considered it a death sentence. Habeler and Messner returned alive. And now, this veteran mountaineer was watching a little boy scale a rock wall. The other kids would cling, slip, get scared. David moved like a lizard, fluid, confident. Habeler saw something a trained eye might spot once in a decade. A complete absence of fear and an innate sense of balance. That same evening, Habeler called David's parents. The conversation was short. The Himalayan veteran didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Your son, he's what I've been searching for my entire life. He has a gift." Words that would change everything. Because Habeler wasn't exaggerating. He had just seen the future. His parents made a decision. The boy was placed under the wing of Reinhold Scherer, the head coach at the Innsbruck climbing gym. Scherer was strict, methodical, a fanatic for detail. His approach wasn't to raise champions, but to shape the mind of a climber, technique, discipline, and understanding of the rock. David started training 6 days a week. While his peers were playing soccer, he spent hours practicing on overhangs. He learned to read a route with his eyes before his hands even touched the first hold. He was developing not just strength, but precision of movement, energy efficiency, mental control. Scherer saw the same thing Habeler did, but he added an observation of his own. David had no limits in his head. Where other kids would think, "That's too hard," he would think, "How can I do it?" The difference is critical. It's what separates good athletes from legends. 1998. An 8-year-old David Lama entered a junior competition. At first, the judges looked at the skinny kid with curiosity. 2 hours later, they were looking at him in disbelief. He was completing routes that 15-year-olds were getting stuck on. This wasn't just talent, it was an anomaly. 2 years later, an event occurred that blew the minds of the entire climbing community. At 10 years old, David sent an 8A route. For the uninitiated, that's like a grade schooler solving a university-level calculus problem. Adult athletes spend years working toward that level. Lama became the youngest person on the planet to ever reach that grade. 2004. David was 14. At a competition in Austria, he walked up to an 8A plus route and on-sighted it. First attempt, no warm-up, no preparation. The judges checked the scorecards twice. This just doesn't happen. That season, and the next, Lama won nearly every youth competition he entered. The IFSC climbing's governing body faced a problem. The rules forbade juniors from competing in the adult league. But when it came to Lama, the rules were holding back progress. The federation called an emergency meeting and changed the regulations, specifically for one person, his first adult competition. 2006. A 15-year-old David won, becoming the youngest person in history to win a Climbing World Cup event. Adult athletes who had been training for decades were left in the dust by a teenager. His debut season brought him the European Championship title in 2 disciplines at once, lead and bouldering. That's like winning the Olympics in both the sprint and the marathon. 2008. David was 18. The overall World Cup title, the ultimate prize that the planet's best climbers fight for. Lama took it, beating out athletes 10 to 15 years his senior. At the awards ceremony, photographers captured his face. There was no euphoria, just calm, because David was already looking beyond. For him, competition climbing was a chapter that was already closed. The walls in the gym were no longer a challenge. His true goal lay outside the world of competitions, in the mountains, where there are no judges, no safety mats, where a mistake costs you your life. 2010. David Lama stood at the pinnacle of the climbing world. 20 years old, he'd won the World Cup, conquered Europe. Sponsors were lining up. Money, fame, recognition, everything an athlete dreams of. And it was at this exact moment that Lama felt empty. He showed up for a training session in Innsbruck. Familiar gym, familiar walls, familiar holds. Reinhold Scherer, his mentor, noticed something was off. David was climbing with his usual technical perfection, but the fire in his eyes was gone. After the session, they talked, and Lama was honest. The gym no longer gave him what he needed. Competitions had become routine. He sent routes that others considered impossible, and he felt nothing. No fear, no risk, no uncertainty, just fun. But Lama needed more than fun. Scherer understood. He'd walked this path himself. When sport climbing becomes too predictable, true alpinists go where nature makes the rules, where plastic holds are replaced by granite, where instead of a safety mat below you, there's just a void. David started spending more time on real rock, the Dolomites, the Alps, classic routes. He felt the difference instantly. The rock was alive. Every crack was unique. The weather changed everything. No judges, no audience, no second chances. There was only you and the mountain. 2011. Lama made a decision that shocked everyone. At 21, at the peak of his career, he announced his retirement from competition climbing, officially, for good. The experts called it insanity. Journalists wrote articles about wasted talent. Sponsors were nervous. Their superstar was walking away from the sport that gave him everything. But Lama wasn't leaving climbing. He was just changing the playing field. The transition began, and it proved to be far harder than anyone expected. Sport climbing and alpinism are different universes. In the gym, you control everything. On the mountain, control is an illusion. David learned how to manage ropes on multi-pitch routes. He mastered ice climbing techniques. He studied safety systems. He learned to read the weather and to work with a partner. Every skill took time, and time is something a young athlete never has enough of. Because in the mountains, there are no second chances. Lama trained in the Alps for months. He climbed classic routes that seasoned alpinists considered training climbs. For him, it was humbling, but it was necessary, because ahead lay a goal that would eclipse all his sporting achievements. 2009, Patagonia. David Lama stood at the base of Cerro Torre and looked up, a 3,000-meter granite spire that pierced the sky. The winds here can reach 200 kilometers an hour. The weather can change in minutes. It's one of the most difficult summits on the planet, and Lama wanted to free climb it, without any artificial aid, just his hands, his feet, and the rock. Red Bull poured a huge amount of money into the project. A film crew, equipment, logistics. The goal was to shoot a documentary about the young star's ascent. The marketing machine was in full swing. Lama was the face of extreme sports. Cerro Torre was the perfect backdrop. The team chose the compressor route, a legendary line established by the Italian Cesare Maestri back in 1970. Maestri had used a gas-powered compressor to drill bolts into the granite. The climbing community still debates whether it was an act of heroism or sacrilege. The film crew began its prep work, and this is where they made a fatal mistake. To keep the camera operators safe, The team fixed ropes all the way up the route. They added dozens of new bolts, metal anchors drilled into the rock. It simplified the logistics. It made filming safe. From a production standpoint, it was logical. From a climbing standpoint, it was a disaster. The news spread through the community in days. Alpinists were in shock. Cerro Torre is a sacred place, a mountain that only a handful of people ever climb. And now, a team with a corporate budget had shown up and turned the route into a theme park. Rolando Garibaldi, one of Patagonia's best alpinists, a man who has dedicated his life to these mountains, climbed Cerro Torre himself. He took his tools, and he methodically chopped the new bolts, one by one. This wasn't vandalism. It was an act of protest. Garibaldi gave an interview. His words were harsh. Lama's team, he said, had turned alpinism into a circus. Placing artificial anchors for the convenience of a film crew was a commercial desecration of the mountain. Cerro Torre is not a movie set. It's a place where people risk their lives for the purity of the ascent. The climbing community sided with Garibaldi. The forums exploded. Articles appeared in climbing magazines. Lama went from being a rising star to a symbol of everything wrong with the commercialization of alpinism. And David didn't understand what was happening. He came from the world of sport climbing, where bolts are the norm, where routes are set specifically for competitions. He didn't see the problem with his team making things safe. But in real alpinism, there's a different code. Here, style is more important than success. How you climb a mountain matters more than just getting to the top. When you artificially simplify a route, you erase the value of the climb. January 2012, Cerro Torre. Two Americans, Hayden Kennedy and Jason Kruk, are making their way up the mountain's southeast ridge. They're climbing in clean style, no artificial aids, just the natural features of the rock. The ascent takes days. The conditions are brutal, but they're climbing the route the way it was meant to be climbed, with integrity. On the way down, Kennedy and Kruk make a decision that will go down in history. They pull out their tools and start chopping Maestri's bolts, methodically, one by one, around 120 of them. A metal ladder that had been there for 40 years, gone in a matter of hours. The Americans' explanation was simple. Maestri's bolts had turned one of the world's most difficult peaks into a tourist attraction. Now, Cerro Torre was being returned to its natural state. The mountain was a true challenge once again. The climbing community was split. Some called Kennedy and Kruk heroes. Others called them vandals. The debates raged for weeks, but one thing was clear. The game had changed. In the spring of 2012, after hearing what Kennedy and Kruk had done, David Lama and his partner, Peter Ortner, returned to the base of Cerro Torre. It had been 3 years since the 2009 scandal. They had prepared for this new attempt for months. They'd studied the route, planned the logistics. They knew the location of every single bolt. And now, standing on the wall, they realize the bolts are gone. Ortner looks at Lama. The question isn't spoken, but it hangs in the air. What do we do now? Turn back? Keep going? Lama is silent for a few minutes. He looks up at the route, then at Ortner. His answer is short. We keep going. The climb transforms from a sporting challenge into a fight for survival. Where there were once reliable bolts for protection, there's now just bare granite. The gaps between natural protection points stretch to 15, even 20 meters. A fall in a section like that means dropping 40 meters. Or maybe even more. Ortner is leading the climb. His job is to find natural cracks where he can place temporary gear. Cams, nuts, chocks, anything that holds on by friction and the shape of the rock. Every piece of gear is uncertain. Every move has to be calculated. Lama belays from below, the rope held tight. If Ortner falls, David has to catch the impact. The physics are simple. The longer the fall, the harder the shock. Catching a 20-meter fall is a task that tests not just your technique, but your nerve. They move slowly, inch by inch. The weather is turning, the wind is picking up, visibility drops. At this altitude, every hour counts. If you freeze, it's over. Lama feels something he never felt in the gym. Fear. Real, primal fear. And this is exactly what he came for. 2,000 meters up. Lama and Ortner have been on the face of Cerro Torre for 20 hours now. Their fingers are numb. Their bodies are at their limit. Ahead is the crux of the climb, a vertical wall of granite with no obvious holds. Ortner looks at the rock, then at David. They have a few bolts left, ones the Americans didn't chop. They could use them for aid. Step into a sling, pull themselves up, get through the section using gear. Lama shakes his head. No, free climb only. Ortner gets it. This is a matter of principle. If they use artificial aid, the ascent loses its meaning. Lama didn't come here just to get to the top. He came to prove that sport climbing technique could work on the world's biggest walls. David approaches the crux section. He studies the rock. Micro holds, barely visible bumps in the granite, thin cracks. He grades the difficulty, 8A. The same grade he was climbing at competitions when he was 14. But that was in a gym, with a comfortable temperature, a crash pad below, unlimited attempts. Here, it's 2,000 meters up, winds at 40 meters per second, the temperature -10. His hands are losing feeling, and he only gets one shot, because a fall here means a 20-meter drop onto questionable gear. Lama begins to move. He double-checks every hold. His feet use friction alone. His fingers grip micro edges. He's using techniques honed over years of training. But here, a single mistake is fatal. 5 meters, 10, 15. Ortner is belaying, but he knows. If David falls now, catching him will be nearly impossible. Too much rope out. The gear is too weak. 20 meters. Lama reaches the next natural ledge. He places a piece of protection and breathes. The crux is behind them. They keep climbing, hour after hour, pitch after pitch. Their bodies are on autopilot. Their minds narrow to a single thought. The next hold, the next meter, the next move. After 24 hours of non-stop climbing, Lama and Ortner reach the summit of Cerro Torre, the first ever free ascent of the southeast ridge. No artificial aid, no compromises. Pure, clean style. The news rips through the climbing world in hours. The forums explode, but this time with a very different kind of commentary. Lama transforms from the corporate villain into a visionary, a man who proved that sport climbing technique could be applied to big walls, as long as you respect the ethics of the climb. Roland Garibaldi, the very man who had chopped bolts in protest, publishes an article. His words are an admission. Lama had shown the world what modern alpinism could be, a combination of technical mastery and respect for the mountain. 2012. Patagonia is behind him. Lama proved he could free climb the big walls. Now he's looking at a map of Asia and asking a new question. What if he raised the bar even higher? The Karakoram. Pakistan. A mountain range where the average peak is over 6,000 meters, where the air is so thin that every breath is an effort, where temperatures drop to -30, where the walls are steeper and taller than anywhere else on Earth. Lama sets his sights on Trango Tower, nameless tower, a 6,000-meter granite monolith with vertical walls a kilometer high. There's a route on it called Eternal Flame, first climbed in 1989. It's graded 7C+, a mind-bending difficulty even at sea level. Lama repeats this route at 6,000 meters. The technique is the same as in the gym, but every movement takes twice the effort. His lungs are burning. His muscles are starved for oxygen. His coordination is failing. And all of this on a wall where a fall means a drop into the abyss. Success on Trango opens a new chapter. Lama understands. He can transfer sport climbing techniques to extreme altitudes. No one had ever done it on this scale. The next objective, Chogolisa, 7,665 meters. It isn't an official 8,000er, but the altitude doesn't care. Up here, you're in the zone where the human body is slowly dying. He doesn't just want to climb it, he wants to ski down it, a free-ride descent from an altitude where most climbers can barely even walk. The expedition begins in September of 2013. The weather immediately shows its teeth. Out of 18 days on the mountain, it snows for 14. Visibility is 0. The wind knocks you off your feet. The team just sits in their tents, waiting for a weather window. In the high mountains, patience isn't a virtue, it's a necessity. Rushing at this altitude means one thing: you don't come back. On day 15, the weather gives them a short break. Lama and his team go for the summit. The ascent takes hours. Every step at this altitude is a battle against hypoxia. Your body begs you to stop. Your brain screams at you to go back down. But Lama keeps going. The summit. Then, the ski descent from 7,500 meters. The slopes are steep. The The snow is unstable. Visibility is limited. One mistake, and an avalanche will bury you in seconds. Lama skis it clean. The technique he perfected in the Alps works here too. But after this climb, he realizes something. High-altitude alpinism and technical free climbing. They can be combined. 2014. Lama is studying photos of Masherbrum, 7,821 meters. The northeast face, a vertical kilometer-high wall that climbers call the Wall of Shadows. There had been many attempts, no successes. He describes it to his friends like this. Picture the Eiger, the legendary north face in the Alps. Now, picture Cerro Torre sitting on top of the Eiger. That's Masherbrum. July 2014, Masherbrum Base Camp. Lama stands alongside Hans-Jürg Auer and Peter Ortner, three of the best climbers of their generation, staring up at the northeast face, a kilometer of vertical ice, snow, and rock. At an altitude of nearly 8,000 meters, Auer, a legend in solo climbing, a man who climbs routes alone faster than most teams, and Ortner, Lama's partner from Cerro Torre, a trusted friend. If anyone can climb this wall, it's this team. They start the ascent at dawn. The first few meters go smoothly. The ice is solid, the protection holds. But after just 1 hour, it's clear. This isn't Patagonia. This is a whole different level. The lower part of the wall is under constant fire. Avalanches come down every 20 to 30 minutes. Tons of snow and ice crashing down from above. The sound is like an explosion. Visibility drops to zero. The shockwave alone can knock you off your feet. Auer calls it Russian roulette. You're climbing with no idea if an avalanche will hit you in the next minute. Statistics don't matter. Luck doesn't matter. You just keep moving. And you hope. The team makes it through the lower section in 6 hours. Every hour on the edge. Several times, avalanches miss them by mere meters. At one point, Ortner gets caught in the edge of a snowslide. It knocks him off his stance, but the rope holds. He's left dangling, spitting out snow, and then he just keeps climbing. The upper part of the wall presents a new problem. This is where the technical rock climbing begins. Graded at 7B with sections of 8A. At sea level, this is hard. At 7,000 meters, it borders on impossible. Lama attempts the crux pitch. His fingers won't obey. His coordination is shot. Every movement requires a level of focus he just doesn't have. His brain is working at 30% capacity. Hypoxia is doing its work. He falls. The rope catches him. He tries again. Another fall, a third time, a fourth. Lama realizes it's not about technique, it's the altitude. The human body isn't built for this kind of punishment at this altitude. The team makes it 400 meters up the 1,000-meter wall. They stop to spend the night. A night on the wall. That's an ordeal in itself. The temperature is minus 25 degrees, the wind 50 meters per second. Sleep is impossible. You just lie there, waiting for the sun to rise. In the morning, Lama calls a meeting. His words are calm but firm. The wall is impossible in these conditions. To continue would be suicide. They descend. It's a decision that shows a maturity many climbers lack. In the mountains, there's a fine line between courage and foolishness. Courage is taking a risk when you have a chance. Foolishness is pushing on when you have none. Lama chooses life. Masherbrum remains unclimbed, but the team returns home. In alpinism, that is a success. 2016. Nepal. Lama is looking at a map of Annapurna 3, 7,555 meters. The southeast ridge, a line that no one has completed since 1981. For 35 years, no one has even made a serious attempt. The reason is simple. The approach to the mountain cuts through an active landslide zone. In 2012, several porters died here. Rock falls come without warning, tons of rock crashing down in seconds. The trek to the base is a lottery with death. Lama makes an unconventional decision. The team will use a helicopter to get to base camp. It's expensive, and it's controversial in the climbing community. Purists consider helicopters a breach of ethics. But Lama frames the question differently. Why risk lives on the approach if the risk isn't justified? The helicopter delivers the team to the foot of the ridge. The climb begins. From the first few meters, it's clear. This isn't Cerro Torre, and it isn't Trango. This is a different reality. The rock has been shattered by frost weathering. handholds crumble in their grasp. What looks like solid granite in photos is, in reality, loose choss, ready to fall apart. Every piece of protection is questionable. You hammer in a piton, it wobbles. You place a cam, the crack widens. The team spends 3 days on the ridge. Progress is slow. Sections that should take an hour take 4. Because they have to use artificial aid in places where they plan to free climb. They're at 6,500 meters. Another 1,000 to the summit. But their pace tells the truth. At this rate, it's a week to the top. They don't have a week's worth of food or fuel. And most importantly, the weather is turning. Winter in the Himalayas doesn't forgive mistakes. The temperature plummets to -35. The wind reaches 100 kilometers an hour. Frostbite can set in within minutes. The team sits in their tent, listening to the wind howl, and they understand. The window is closing. Lama makes the call. Descend. For the second time in 2 years, he's turning back from a major face. But this isn't a defeat, it's a calculation. After returning, he gives an interview. His words sound like a verdict. The southeast ridge of Annapurna 3 is at the very limit of human possibility. Technically harder than Cerro Torre, higher than Masherbrum, with worse rock than anywhere else. Maybe someday someone will climb this route, but it will require a perfect combination of weather, physical form, and luck. 3 factors that rarely align in the mountains. 2015, Innsbruck. David Lama gets a call from Konrad Anker. For a young alpinist, this is like a rookie basketball player getting an offer to play one-on-one with Michael Jordan. Anker is a living legend, the man who found George Mallory's body on Everest in 1999. He's put up dozens of first ascents. He's 52 years old, but in better shape than most 30-year-olds. He offers Lama a joint project. Lunagiri, 6,907 meters. Nepal. The West Face, a vertical kilometer of mixed climbing. Ice, snow, rock, all of it, all difficult. The summit is unclimbed. There had been a few attempts. All of them ended in failure. Anker sees Lama as the perfect partner. Youth, technique, endurance. Lama sees in Anker what he lacks. Big wall Himalayan experience and tactical wisdom. Their first attempt is in 2015. The team spends several days on the face. The mixed terrain, that combination of rock and ice, proves harder than they anticipated. Sections demand M6 climbing, which at almost 7,000 meters is work at the absolute limit. The ice is unreliable. The rock is coated in frost. Every piece of protection is suspect. At 6,000 meters, the weather turns. Visibility drops to 0. Anker makes the decision to descend. Lama agrees. In the mountains, the experience of a senior partner means more than ambition. 2016. The second attempt. The team is better prepared. They've studied the route. The tactics are refined. The weather window looks stable. They start the climb with confidence. They reach 6,000 meters. Anker is leading the pitch. Lama is belaying from below. And suddenly, Konrad stops. His breathing changes. He clutches his chest. A heart attack. On the face. At 6,000 meters. Lama's response is instant. There's no panic. Only action. He secures Anker and begins the descent. Every second is critical. At this altitude, a heart attack is a death sentence without immediate help. The descent takes hours. Lama does the work of 2 men, setting anchors, lowering anchor, re-rigging the systems. Konrad is conscious but weak. He knows that without David, he won't survive. Base camp. An emergency call goes out. A helicopter arrives 2 hours later. Anker is evacuated. The diagnosis is confirmed. A massive heart attack. Another hour on that wall, and it would have all been over. Lama is left alone at base camp. The weather window is still open. Technically, he could try for a solo ascent, alone, without a belay, without a partner. He looks at the wall. He thinks for several hours. The decision comes quickly. No, Lunagiri is a route for a team. To go alone isn't just a risk. It's disrespectful to the mountain, and to what just happened. Later, Anker gives an interview from his hospital bed. His words are honest. He will never return to routes like this. His body gave him a signal. At 53 years old, the body doesn't forgive the strain of high-altitude alpinism. It's the end of an era, but for Lama, it's just the beginning. Lunagri is waiting. October 2018. David Lama is standing at the foot of Lunagri again. 2 years have passed since the incident with Anchor. For 2 years, he's been thinking about this wall, and now he makes a decision that many would consider madness. He's going to go alone. A solo ascent of a 7,000er with complex mixed climbing? That's something alpinists only talk about in theory. In practice, these kinds of attempts end in tragedy. But Lama isn't climbing without protection. He's using a technique called rope solo. The principle is simple, but the execution is grueling. You climb a rope length, fix the rope, rappel down, clean your gear, and then climb back up the rope. You climb every meter of the wall 3 times. A kilometer of climbing becomes 3 kilometers of work. At sea level, it's exhausting. At 7,000 meters, it's torture. Lama begins his ascent in the morning. The first few hours are methodical. Climb, fix, rappel, repeat. His muscles work on autopilot. His mind is focused on the details, the anchor, the tension in the rope, the next move. By evening, the temperature drops to -30. The wind hits 80 kilometers an hour. Lama sets up his first bivvy, a tiny ledge on the face where he can spend the night. The tent barely holds. The wind rips at the fabric. It's no warmer inside than it is out. Morning of day 2. Lama checks his toes. He can't feel them. The first sign of frostbite. In a normal situation, this is the signal to turn back. But Lama pushes on. Because he knows, if he stops now, he will never come back here. The second day is a blur of pain and fatigue. Every movement requires conscious effort. His body is screaming at him to stop. His mind forces him to continue. The third day, October 25th, Lama reaches the final head wall. The last 100 meters to the summit. M6 mixed climbing, ice interspersed with rock, the hardest section of the route. And he has to climb it alone, at the limit of his strength, with frostbitten feet. He climbs slowly. Every hold is tested twice. Every piece of protection is placed with the precision of a surgeon. A single mistake here means the end. 3 hours of work. And then, he's standing on the summit of Lunagri, the first person to ever set foot there. The unclimbed peak has fallen. The project he started with Anchor 3 years ago is complete. Lama stays on the summit for 10 minutes. He takes a few photos, then he begins the descent. Because in mountaineering, the summit is only halfway. 2019. Lama is posthumously awarded the PLA d'Or, the Golden Ice Axe, the highest honor in mountaineering. The jury calls the ascent of Lunagri a masterpiece of modern alpine style. Technical difficulty, altitude, a solo ascent, and clean style. All of it together creates a climb of legendary status. April 2019, Innsbruck. David Lama meets with Hans-Jörg Auer and Jess Roskilly. 3 names that, in the world of climbing, sound like the roster of a super team. Auer, a master of speed solo ascents, a man who could climb in a day what took others a week. Roskilly, the scion of a legendary climbing dynasty, his father and grandfather were pioneers of Himalayan alpinism. Lama, the technician with the experience of Cerro Torre and Lunagri. Together, they form a team that the magazines are calling the Dream Team. If these 3 can't climb a route, then the route is impossible. Their objective, the Canadian Rockies, the province of Alberta, Banff. The region is known for its short ice and mixed climbing season. April is the last month when conditions permit attempts on the big faces. The team flies in at the beginning of the month. The first task is to acclimatize. Even though the Rockies are lower than the Himalayas, a sudden jump to altitude is dangerous. The body has to adapt. They choose a route called the Andromeda Strain, a classic of the area. 900 meters of ice and mixed terrain, perfect for a warm-up. The team climbs it in a single day, clean, fast, no problems. Their technique is flawless. The partnership is dialed. Everyone is ready for the main objective, Howes Peak, the east face, 1,000 meters of vertical ice. The route is famous for 2 things, its technical difficulty and its extreme avalanche danger. The face sits inside a couloir, a natural funnel for recurring snowslides. Time on the route is critical. The longer you're on the face, the greater the risk of an avalanche. For days, Lama, Auer, and Roskilly study the wall, planning their line. Their choice is ambitious, to link 2 classic routes, M16 and the King line into a single push. This would forge a new line, more direct and far more difficult. M16 is graded WI6, which means vertical ice with barely any holds. The King line is even tougher, a high-grade mixed climb. Together, they create a combination that few would ever dare to attempt. The team discusses tactics. Speed is the top priority. The faster they move up the face, the lower the risk. The plan is to start the climb at night, when the temperatures are low and the ice is stable. They need to get through the key sections before noon, when the sun starts to warm the slopes and trigger avalanches. April 16th. The weather forecast is stable. The temperature is minus 15 degrees with no wind. A perfect window for the ascent. The team preps their gear, checking the ropes, ice tools, and belay systems. Every single detail is critical. In the evening, they drive to the base of the mountain. The plan is to get a few hours of sleep, then set out at 2 in the morning. They'll start the climb in the dark, guided by their headlamps, aiming to clear the lower third of the route by dawn. Before sleeping, Ross Kelly jokes that after this route, they could take a month off. Auer agrees. Lama is silent. He's always silent before a climb. Total focus. April 16th, 2019, 5:51 a.m. The temperature is minus 18 degrees. 3 figures emerge from a bivouac at the base of the east face of Howes Peak. Their headlamps slice through the darkness. The ice crunches under their boots. The climb begins. The first few hours are all about rhythm. Auer takes the lead on the lower pitches. His technique is flawless. His ice tools sink into the ice with surgical precision. His crampons find purchase where there seems to be none. Ross Kelly and Lama follow, the rope pulled taut between them. Their movement is fluid. 8:36 a.m. dawn. Lama takes the lead on the crux pitch. It's vertical ice, graded WI6+. This means a 90-degree angle, brittle ice, and almost no holds. Every swing of an ice tool has to be perfect. Too hard, and the ice will shatter. Too soft, and the tool won't hold. Lama works methodically, gaining height step by step. Below, Ross Kelly belays and films him. The footage shows David's intense concentration. No wasted movements, only what's necessary. This is technique honed over years. He clears the section in 40 minutes and secures the rope. Ross Kelly and Auer follow. Their pace is good. They're on track to reach the summit by noon. So far, everything is going exactly to plan. 11:02 a.m. Ross Kelly is now leading on the mixed terrain ridge. Here, ice gives way to frost-covered rock. You have to constantly switch techniques. Ice tools for the ice, handholds for the rock. The grade is M7. Jess moves with confidence. Climbing routes like this has been in his family for 3 generations. It's in his genes. The team is moving fast, faster than they planned. That's a good sign. Less time on the face means less risk. The weather holds stable. There's almost no wind. The temperature is rising, but not critically. 12:44 p.m., the summit of Howes Peak. 3,295 meters. Lama, Auer, and Ross Kelly are standing on top. They've done it. A new line has been established. The combination of M16 and the King line is now a reality. Ross Kelly pulls out his phone. The summit selfie is a tradition. The photo shows all 3 of them. Their faces are tired, but their smiles are genuine. Auer has his arm around Lama's shoulders. Ross Kelly gives a thumbs up. A moment of triumph. They stay on the summit for 15 minutes, drinking water, eating energy bars, resting before the descent. Because in mountaineering, getting down is often more dangerous than getting up. Fatigue builds up, concentration wanes. This is where mistakes happen. 1:27 p.m. The last photograph. Lama checks the rope for the rappel. Auer sets up the anchor station. Ross Kelly packs away his camera. They're ready. The descent begins down the north face, the standard route used by all climbers. The weather is still good. Visibility is excellent. The slope ahead looks stable. There's nothing to suggest any problems. This is just a routine descent after a successful climb. A routine they've gone through dozens of times. 1:40 p.m. The team begins their descent down the North Couloir. It's a standard rappel, descending the rope using a belay device. Auer goes first. Lama follows. Ross Kelly manages the anchor from above. The slope looks stable. The The snow is dense and the temperature hasn't yet reached a critical point. Everything is by the book, a standard technical descent, the kind they've done hundreds of times. Down below, on the Icefields Parkway, a tourist pulls his car over. He takes out a camera. Howes Peak against a blue sky, the perfect Instagram shot. He points his lens at the face. Through the camera, the photographer's eye catches a flicker of movement. The summit cornice, a huge overhanging block of compressed snow, begins to crumble. Tons of snow and ice break free from the ridge and plummet downwards. The tourist keeps filming, not realizing he's watching the start of a catastrophe. The cornice smashes onto the slope below. The impact triggers a chain reaction. The snowpack, which seemed stable just moments ago, instantly loses its cohesion. A Class 3 avalanche begins. A massive torrent of snow, ice, and rock moving at 100 kilometers an hour. A Class 3 avalanche isn't some gentle slide of snow you see in the movies. It's a moving wall, several meters high. The pressure inside it can reach several tons per square meter. A person caught inside can't breathe, can't move, can't fight it. You're just swept along like a piece of driftwood in a flood. The photograph shows a white cloud enveloping the upper part of the couloir. Where a slope stood just a second ago, there is now a churning mass. Lama, Auer, and Roskilde are in the direct path of the slide. They have no time to react. The avalanche hits them instantly. Ropes snap. Their bodies are swept away, dragged down over rocks, ice, and boulders. A fall of several hundred vertical meters. The avalanche finally comes to a stop in the lower cirque. Silence. Only a fine mist of snow dust slowly settles in the air. On the road, the tourist stands with his camera, unaware that he has just witnessed the deaths of 3 of the world's best climbers. He uploads his photo to social media with a caption about the beauty of nature. Evening. John Roskilde, Jess's father, and a legendary climber in his own right, is waiting for his son's call. They had arranged to talk in the evening. Jess was always punctual. If he said he'd call at 6, he called at 6 on the dot. 6 o'clock. No call. 7. 8. John starts to worry. He calls the park coordinator. He learns the group had summited in the morning. They should have been down by evening. 9 p.m. John Roskilde officially raises the alarm. The rescue service begins organizing a search operation. But searching in the mountains at night is futile and deadly. The helicopters will fly at dawn. April 17th. Dawn. 2 parks. Canada helicopters lift off over Banff. On board are rescuers with years of mountain operations experience. The pilots know every meter of these peaks, but what they are about to see will stay with them for the rest of their lives. The helicopter approaches the north face of Howes Peak. The picture is immediately clear. The entire couloir has been scoured by the avalanche. The snow is mixed with chunks of ice and rock. Bright spots stand out against the white, fragments of gear, ropes, a backpack, an ice tool. A rescuer speaks into his headset, reporting to the coordinator. His voice is steady, professional, but his words say it all. There's no chance of survival. This isn't a rescue mission anymore. It's a recovery. The problem is the weather. The wind is picking up. Visibility is getting worse. Putting men on that slope under these conditions would risk losing the rescue team. The operation commander makes the call. They pull back. They'll wait for a window. For the next 3 days, the weather offers no chance. Snowfall, high winds, low clouds. The helicopters are grounded. John Roskilde waits in a hotel room. Every hour feels like an eternity. He knows his son is gone, but without a body, the loss feels unreal. April 21st. The weather provides a brief window. A helicopter flies up to Howes Peak again. Rescuers are dropped onto the edge of the avalanche debris field. They begin the search. They find Lama and Roskilde first. They are still roped together. They're in the lower part of the cirque, where the avalanche came to rest. Their bodies are partially buried in snow. The rescuers work quickly, methodically. They document the position, take photos for the report, and prepare them for evacuation. Auer is found separately, about 50 meters higher up the slope. This speaks volumes. At the moment of the slide, he was likely in a different position. Maybe he was working the ropes at an anchor, or descending on his own, while the others prepared the next section. One of the rescuers notices a detail on Roskilde's ice tool, a friction hitch, a special knot used for self-belay while rappelling. The knot is tied correctly, professionally. This means that at the moment of impact, the group was conducting a technical descent. They were doing everything right. They followed protocol. They were using standard safety procedures. The avalanche was an objective hazard. A cornice collapse is impossible to predict. No amount of skill, no amount of experience can protect you from tons of snow falling from above. This wasn't climber error. This was the mountain. The bodies are airlifted to the valley. The formal process begins. Identification, paperwork, notifying the families. The rescuers write their report. The conclusions are brief. The team was operating according to all safety standards. The cause was an objective hazard, an unpredictable cornice collapse. In the climbing community, the discussions begin. Forums, articles, social media posts. The question is always the same. Could this tragedy have been avoided? The answer is complex. Technically, no. Cornices collapsed without warning. The weather was stable. The time of descent was appropriate. The route was standard. Some point to the time of year, April, late in the season, when the snowpack can become unstable. But April in the Canadian Rockies is a normal time for climbing. Dozens of teams complete routes during this period without any issues. The news of the deaths of Lama, Auer, and Roskelley travels the world in hours. The climbing community is in shock. Social media fills with tributes. 3 legends, 1 avalanche, the end of an era. But what does a person leave behind, other than a record of their climbs? In his 28 years, David Lama managed to do the impossible. He brought the fluid grace of 8A sport, climbing to the death zone, above 7,000 meters. He proved that the techniques of a competition climber could work on the world's biggest walls. He set a new standard for alpinism. His evolution was one of a kind, from a young prodigy dominating indoor competitions to a mature mountaineer making the call to turn back on Masherbrum. It was a coming-of-age story, condensed into just 15 years. Lama left behind films, but not just slick promotional videos plastered with sponsor logos. His documentaries put failure front and center. Patagonia, 2009, The Bolt Controversy. Masherbrum, 2014, A Retreat. Annapurna, 2016, Turning Back Yet Again. He never shied away from his failures. Because in alpinism, failure is just part of the process. His friends remember his sense of calm. A Buddhist-like calm, as Conrad Anker put it. Lama never panicked on the face, never raised his voice. He just did what needed to be done, methodically, precisely, dispassionately. And yet, he had a deep appreciation for the simple things. Tyrolean speck with spices was his favorite meal, flying in the face of every athlete's diet. After a big climb, you'd find him eating a whole plate of it, washed down with a beer. Because life, for him, wasn't just about training and mountains. His philosophy was simple. Risk is always there. What's important is to be fully committed to your decisions. He never denied the danger. He never pretended to be immortal. He simply accepted risk as part of the equation. April 16, 2019, on Howes Peak, would prove just how right he was. It was a brutal reminder that even perfect technique can't guarantee survival. The mountains don't forgive. Nature is more powerful than any human. It always has been. It always will be. David Lama was 28 years old. He spent half his life on the world's great walls. He changed the game of alpinism. He inspired a generation. And in the end, he's remembered not as another victim of the mountains, but as someone who truly lived life on his own terms.